She screamed before I even reached the gate. "Call the cops! He's breaking in!" Her voice echoed across the driveway as two patrol cars slid to a stop, like they were waiting for her signal. I didn't say a word. I just stood there with my suitcase in my hand, looking at the woman who had changed the locks on my own mansion. She waved a stack of papers in the air and shouted that I was trespassing, that the HOA had removed me, that this house now belonged to the community. One cop looked at me like I was already guilty. The other asked for my ID. I handed it over slowly. Calm on the outside, heart racing inside. Karen smiled like she had already won. She walked past me, opened the front door with confidence, and said, "See? I live here now." That's when I noticed my family photos were gone from the walls, replaced with hers. The cop turned to me and said, "Sir, why are you trying to enter this property?" I looked at Karen, then back at the cop, and said quietly, "Because I built it. Land doesn't forget its owner, even when people try to erase him." Karen laughed like I had told a joke. She said the HOA declared the house abandoned while I was overseas, that I failed to respond to notices, that rules are rules. She kept talking fast, throwing words at the cops so I wouldn't get a chance to breathe. One officer nodded, the other asked me where I'd been for 6 months. I said, "Serving." That's when her smile slipped for half a second, then came back stronger. She told them I was lying, that men like me always make up stories when they get caught. She pulled out an HOA letter with a bold red stamp and said my access was revoked. Then she leaned close to me and whispered, "You should have stayed gone." Before I could answer, a tow truck rolled in behind us. My car, hooked already. Karen folded her arms and said, "HOA decision, unauthorized vehicle." The tow driver didn't even look at me. I watched my car lift off the ground while the cop said, "Sir, maybe you should cooperate." That's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. One message, from a number saved as gate control. It said, "Motion detected. Do you want me to unlock the house?" I didn't answer the message, not yet. I looked at Karen and said nothing, and that silence made her nervous. She told the cops I was stalling, that I was dangerous, that I had threatened her before. One of the officers stepped closer and asked me to put my bag down. Karen's eyes lit up like this was the moment she wanted. Then she did something worse. She pointed at my daughter's old bike near the lawn and said, "That's been abandoned too. Kids aren't even allowed here." Hearing that hit harder than the tow truck. I felt my jaw tighten, but I stayed calm. I asked the cop one simple thing. "Can I make one call?" Karen cut in fast, said no, HOA rules don't allow it. That's when the officer paused. "Rules don't beat rights." He nodded. I dialed the number back. Karen rolled her eyes and said, "Go ahead. Call whoever you want." I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call family. I said quietly into the phone, "Open all cameras. Send live feed." Her face changed when every light on the house turned on at once. Screens inside the patrol car lit up. The officer frowned and said, "Ma'am, why is your face on this property's private security system? Never move into a house that can still see you." Karen stepped back like the ground moved under her feet. She said the cameras were part of the HOA upgrade, that everyone had access. The officer didn't answer her. He replayed the footage again. Her entering the house months ago, changing locks, ordering workers, sleeping in the master bedroom. "Date and time clear." She started talking faster, blaming a former board member, saying she was given verbal permission. Then she made a mistake. She told the cop I had been gone too long to still own anything here. That's when I finally spoke louder. I said I never stopped paying taxes, never stopped utilities, never missed a mortgage payment. I said the house was never abandoned. Karen snapped and shouted that she was protecting the community from strangers like me. The words hung heavy. The cop asked her for proof of ownership. She handed over HOA papers again, shaking now. He looked at me and asked, "Sir, do you have anything official?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a single folder. Not thick, not fancy, just clean. The original deed, with my name on it. Karen stared at it like it was fake. Then the other officer's radio crackled. Dispatch said my name slowly, then added, "Sir, are you the same one listed as property complainant on 3 prior HOA abuse reports?" I nodded. Karen whispered, "What reports?" "Paper trails don't sleep. They wait." Karen started crying out of nowhere, loud, shaky. She said she was scared, that I was intimidating her, that I showed up out of the dark and tried to take her home. One of the cops raised his hand for her to calm down, but she kept going. Then she pointed at me and said the words she thought would save her. He threatened me before. He said he has power. That's when the first cop asked me, very calmly, "Sir, what kind of power?" I looked at him and said, "The boring kind. Documents, cameras, and friends who don't like fraud." The second cop stepped away and took another call. Karen tried to follow him, but the first officer stopped her. She looked small now. Her voice dropped. She asked if we could talk privately. I shook my head. Then the cop came back and said something that made the air feel heavy. He said the HOA president reported this house as occupied by owner 3 months ago. Karen froze. She whispered that it was a mistake. The cop asked, "Then why were you collecting rent from a short-term tenant last month?" Her mouth opened. No sound came out. I felt my phone buzz again. Another message from gate control. "Sir, should I release the backup files too?" I nodded once. That was it. Every screen in the patrol cars filled with clips she never knew existed. Her signing a rental contract. Her counting cash at the kitchen island. Her telling a couple, "The owner won't be back." One cop let out a slow breath and said, "Ma'am, this is not a misunderstanding." Karen dropped her purse like her hands, stopped working. She tried one last move and said the HOA forced her, that they promised protection. The officer asked for names. She gave them fast, too fast. That's when another car pulled up, unmarked. A man stepped out who didn't look confused at all. He looked at me and nodded like we already met. Karen asked who he was. He said, "County Fraud Unit." Her knees almost gave out. He asked me how long I was gone. I said 8 months. He said, "That lines up." Then he looked at Karen and said she'd been under review for weeks for doing this to other homes. She screamed that it wasn't fair, that people like me always get special treatment. I leaned in just enough and said, "No, I just came back." The cuffs clicked softly around her wrists. Some people don't fear the owner until he walks through the door. They walked her past the gate she once claimed was hers. Neighbors peeked through curtains, phones out now, recording the same woman who used to fine them for trash cans and paint colors. The tow truck stopped. My car was lowered back down like nothing ever happened. One cop handed me the keys and said sorry. Not loud, but real. The man from fraud asked if I wanted to press charges. I looked at my house. My real house. I said yes. Inside, the rooms felt quiet again. Empty in the right way. I picked up a frame Karen missed in her rush. My family photo, still face down on the shelf. I set it back where it belonged. Outside, Karen shouted that the HOA would fix this, that she still had power. The fraud officer didn't even turn around. He said the HOA board was being audited next. Federal, that word hit hard. When the cars left, the gate closed behind them on its own. I stood there alone for a moment, then texted one line to gate control. "Reset everything." The lights dimmed. The cameras blinked. The house breathed again. I didn't leave my home behind. I just left it waiting. The next morning, a black SUV stopped outside my gate. Not police, not HOA. My wife stepped out, uniform jacket still on, calm like always. Karen used to call her quiet. She never knew quiet people watch everything. My wife walked through the house, checked the locks, the systems, the walls Karen thought she owned. She said softly, "She tried to access the armory room too." That was the last twist I didn't need to explain. By noon, the HOA website went dark. Board members started resigning. By evening, my daughter rode her bike again on the same driveway Karen said didn't belong to us. A flag I had folded before deployment went back up on the porch. One neighbor whispered, "We judged you wrong." I smiled and said nothing. Some lessons don't need speeches. I stood on my land as the sun went down, knowing this fight wasn't about a house. It was about freedom, paperwork, and patience. I didn't fight for this country to ask permission to come home. 3 days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No logo, no threats. Just one line typed clean. Case closed. Property secured. Stood there holding it when a moving truck pulled up across the street. New family, quiet, nervous. They asked me if the HOA was strict here. I smiled and said, Not anymore. What they didn't know was that every fine Karen ever wrote was being reversed. Every illegal notice wiped clean. Neighbors started waving. Some apologized without words. At night, I walked the halls once more, not checking for intruders, just listening. The house was finally honest again. Before sleeping, I opened my phone and deleted one contact. Gate control. No more alerts needed. Some people steal houses. Others reclaim peace. A week later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. A calm voice said my name and asked if I was the homeowner involved in the HOA fraud case. I said yes. He said he was calling from the county, and then added, "You might want to sit down." Karen hadn't just been living in my house. She had been using it as proof to take loans, forge documents, and push out owners who traveled or stayed quiet. My mansion was her biggest move, and her last mistake. The case didn't end with her arrest. It cracked open everything. Properties returned. People cleared. One man even got his home back after 2 years. When the call ended, I looked around my living room and felt something heavy lift. This wasn't just my win, it was everyone's. I stepped outside, touched the gate once and let it stay open. Power built on lies always falls. The truth just needs one door to open. Months later, the neighborhood felt different. People waved without suspicion. Kids played without fear of fines. Even the HOA office, once a fortress of intimidation, had new faces, people who actually followed the rules. I walked past my mansion's front lawn, noticing small repairs neighbors had done while I was away, smiling at the irony that Karen's chaos had somehow reminded everyone what community could be. My daughter rode her bike, laughing louder than before. My wife stood on the porch, arms crossed, proud but quiet. And for the first time since returning, I didn't check cameras, didn't double-lock doors. The house felt alive, honest, ours again. A final message popped on my phone, not from gate control, just a notification, all systems secure. I put it down, looked at the sunset, and whispered. Some battles are loud, some are silent, but freedom always wins in the end. End the story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing HOA stories.